I am not a Jerry Seinfeld fan. He said a few things recently that I think are garbage, and I think he showed poor judgment when he was dating underage women at the height of his fame. If we were to set that stuff aside and speak purely professionally, I respect the heights to which Seinfeld managed to climb. At one time, and for quite a while, I think it's fair to say that he was at the pinnacle of comedy, but I don't buy the separate art from artist movement. I think the way that you conduct yourself as a human matters. He recently made a movie called Unfrosted, which has not done very well, even though, in my opinion, it has a lot of good parts. I'm going to take it apart, show you why I think it fell flat despite those good parts, and I'm going to touch on why I think Jerry Seinfeld's mindset and attitude could be the issue with this underbaked film. Actually, scratch that. It's overbaked. Let me show you what I mean. Unfrosted is on Netflix. You should go and watch it there before watching this review because I'm going to talk about story beats that will ruin the story for you if you don't. And speaking of great stories, thanks to these fine people who support this channel via Patreon. It means a ton to me, as it does to all indie creators. Thank you guys. To my eye, this film has a structurally serviceable story. Everyone has clear wants and clear obstacles. They make choices that make sense based on the story, and the moves that either side makes jigsaw well into one another. The script observes story structure guidelines well, which I think is a smart move if you're attempting comedy. Simple plots, simple shots. Unfrosted is written by Seinfeld and the same team of pals that helped him write B-Movie.
You like jazz?
There are good jokes in this film and situations that absolutely should have worked. I mean, it's not like Jerry Seinfeld doesn't know how to write comedy or jokes, so you'd expect that to be the case. The material is there. The editing is also there. It's so easy as a comedy editor to stay on a moment that you think is funny. But the problem is, if you do that, you can lose the audience, even if the moment really is funny, by overplaying your hand. You know, I just watched some stuff that I edited a couple of years ago, and I definitely overplayed some of those moments. Even at the time, you can think, man, I am being so good. I am editing this shit to the bone. It's all bone. And then here I am a few years later, and that bone looks more like gristle. That's just how it goes. This film does not do that. It delivers the moment and then moves on.
We need to find out if this is real. I need Chester Slink.
Who's that?
I'm on the phone, Bob.
Direct from...
It's extremely well edited, in my opinion, which is a hugely underrated component. You know, editing is kind of the bass player of a film, often ignored, sometimes even treated badly, but when it's not there, the show falls apart. The film has an ensemble cast, by which I mean there are way too many people, but they're all comedians or otherwise famous. It also has way too many cars in establishing shots, but I think we know where they got all those vintage cars. The cast kill it in this. They all play their roles straight, which is usually the way to deliver comedy.
You don't play with El Sucre.
Remember I talked about overplaying your hand a minute ago as an editor? Well, it's also possible to overplay your hand as an actor. Here's where we get into the first major problem with Unfrosted, Jerry Seinfeld's acting and directing of his acting. As I said, everyone in the film plays their character straight. Even though they are overacting, which is the tone of the film, they're not making the mistake of mugging for the camera or being self-conscious about it. They commit to the bits, and the commitment is often hilarious.
He's in the walls.
But Seinfeld plays the film as his comedic persona. It's obvious he is trying to be funny, and it does not work for that reason. Had he played it closer to his understated self, saying the exact same lines and letting the film be a whirlwind of chaos around him, I think it would have worked a lot better.
Mine, whatever you have.
The director should have said to Seinfeld on shot one of day one, hey pal, bring it back a bit. But since Seinfeld chose to star and direct, he either couldn't see it or would not do that. Had he done that in this film, I think it would have served the film better, especially given the way the film is shot. And here we get into problem two. The film is shot in hyper-realistic color and with all the old hyper-realistic movie tricks like wetting the streets. I think the problem with this is it's too much hyper-realism. Think about a film like Hudsucker Proxy. That has a lot of this stage-style, hyper-realistic acting.
But I sure wouldn't shell out a nickel to read the that blame thing.
But the set decoration and the costumes are extremely muted. Now think about Wes Anderson's film, Grand Budapest Hotel. That film has hyper-realistic sets and costumes and coloring, but the characters often deliver their lines with very little movement, extremely understated.
The Grand Budapest has become a troops' barracks. I shall never cross its threshold again in my lifetime.
I think it would have served Unfrosted better to pick one or the other, and I think that a seasoned director would have probably made that call on set, had they been there. Unfortunately for the project, the director and the lead actor are the same person, Jerry Seinfeld. I honestly think this film has the parts to be a comedy classic, and I think had someone else directed it, like a Greta Gerwig, for example, it could have been that. I think Seinfeld could have done this exact thing, including writing it with his pals and starring in it, and had a smash hit. But maybe that wasn't his goal. If the whole reason he did it was because he wanted to direct and star, then it's nonsense to suggest another director because there's no universe where Seinfeld would have been happy with that. Maybe his goal was just to have some fun with some friends, shooting a film similar in tone to the films that he grew up on. If so, I'm guessing he probably feels it was a success. It went straight to Netflix, so we don't know what kind of money it made or whether it paid back its budget, but my guess is everyone's gonna be fine. It's not like reviewers are ever particularly kind to comedic films. Having said that, it's also kind of hard to just let it lie there when Seinfeld is going around bitching about how woke everyone is and how that's ruining comedy. But Seinfeld has a lot of interesting stuff to say about the work of being a writer and the mechanical process of comedy. He's known for that kind of thing. And I agree with a lot of his thoughts on it, but in promoting Unfrosted, Seinfeld gave an interview to The New Yorker's David Remnick, where he expressed that he thinks that comedians are good at policing themselves. I'm paraphrasing here, and you should listen for yourself, but basically he's saying that comedians know when they cross a line because the audience lets them know. But that doesn't make sense if the audience is filtered for people who want to see lines crossed, which in comedy clubs right now, it is. I mean, imagine someone who performs exclusively at sci-fi conventions saying, the audience will let me know if I talk too much about Star Trek. Stand-up comedy right now has a cruelty and right-wing ideology problem. I've talked a lot about how that has happened. The cruelty profiteering movement powered by social media has shifted the landscape, but Seinfeld still seems to think that audiences in comedy clubs are a representative slice of the American population. So whatever they like must be what everyone likes. Here's Seinfeld in 2018 during the Me Too movement being asked why so many men in the entertainment industry seem to be taking advantage of women.
What's wrong with the industry? I mean, are you asking yourself how come all of this is
It's not
coming?
the industry, honey. It's the whole gender. It's men and women. This is about men and women.
You just called me honey.
Yeah.
At the risk of egregious understatement, that does not seem to me like a self-aware way to respond to that question from that journalist. I don't think that Seinfeld has that accurate picture. Even outside of all the stuff I just said, the guy is crazy wealthy and 70 years old. I think that disconnection made it hard for him to make a comedy film, especially since he chose to both act and direct. Maybe comedians aren't that good at policing themselves. Maybe Seinfeld thinks nothing is wrong with the industry because he's not taking a real critical look at it, except to make sure that his checks are still arriving. Maybe Unfrosted would have been a better product if he stopped being so sure he has a good grip and let someone else cook. Watch Unfrosted yourself and see what you think. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, like and subscribe, and maybe jump on the Patreon if you want to help me make more. And if you want to talk about comedy writing with people who are trying to do it in a constructive way, we also have a Discord channel.